I'll try to make my presentation shorter, so we'll have time also for discussion and for Paul Reynolds to maybe also to present some slides. The amphora production in the Black Sea area is less variated than in the Mediterranean, in the Eastern Mediterranean especially. We've seen almost over 100 amphora types in this previous presentation. The most common products carried by amphorae and pontic amphorae were wine and processed fish, mostly salt fish. So basically we deal with two types of contents, a liquid content and solid, probably semi-solid content of the fish production. We have also some olive oil production in around the European area, but it was, as you see, we don't have proof that it was production on the large scale, widely exported, and so on. For this reason, the nature of this content, I divided based on morphological grounds, mainly amphorae and wine amphorae and fish processed amphorae. I also can I make it work? Okay, now. I also I've been also interested in seeing a kind of hierarchy of structure of this amphora production. Hierarchy that will help us understand better the economic situation which existed in this pontic area. So I think that mapping the presence of some pontic amphorae like North Pontic or South Pontic in this region, Lower Danube area, I was able to understand the regional trade that that developed in this zone. Also, for understanding much better, we can understand much better this regional trade, pontic trade, we have to be aware of the surface currents which exist in the Black Sea. We have in the western half of the Black Sea, we have one current, and the eastern side a different current. So this situation favorized probably the local trade, the regional trade. So let's talk about the Lower Danube wine production. Starting with the 1st century BC, one of the most important phenomena that occur in the Pontic area is the massive transplantation of Aegean grape vines. Of course, this process occurred earlier in the Mediterranean, possibly earlier also in the Black Sea, but the amphora discoveries testify only to this time, starting with the middle of the 1st century BC. We have COAN imitation made at Sinope, also at Heraclea. But at the same time, they continue to produce the old-style Sinopian amphora like this one, and all of them have been found together in a shipwreck, Sinope E. During the next century, second and third century, Heraclea developed this shape, pseudo-COAN shape, and this evolution can be followed from the second until the end of the fourth century. Also, Sinope developed its own wine amphora. You can see in this one. And also, a recent discovery made during this summer at POMPEIOPOLIS in northern Anatolia. It's a city situated only 150 kilometers south of Sinope, but it's a huge mountain, like a barrier that didn't favorize the direct trade in contact with Sinope. But so you can see this is a typical Pompeianopolis fabric and the base of pseudo-COAN amphora. However, if we can understand this imitation of Rhodian and COAN amphora in these old Greek cities, due to the, of course, of the trade connection between them and the Aegean centers. What is amazing is the discovery of this imitation north of the Danube, between the eastern part between the mountains and the Danube. And this imitation started also around the mid-1st century BC and were made by the local RACIIC populations. We have a flourishing wine production, and the fact that they try to imitate Rhodian COAN amphora shows that we deal here with also with transplantation of grape vines from the Aegean. This is actually a normal situation of exporting vines, and we have an RACIIC shipwreck around 350 BC, roots of vine roots quite well preserved, so it was a well-spread phenomenon. Of course, this amphora were stamped with different symbols, and they had mostly a provincial circulation from the west. They've been found these stamps in the western Bulgaria until to Odessa region. See here a COAN, classical COAN amphora imported in with a typical fabric, and the local RACIIC imitations in a local fabric. And see, it quite well. It's a quite well done copy. Another copy maybe of a Maastrian South Pontic amphora. It's a typical fabric, and also in the northern part of Romania and Moldavia, we have another imitation, local imitation, but this time, see the Heraclean imitation, of course, in the local imitation of this. We have very, very intensive affirmation of this wine culture and wine civilization. It's a huge, abundant production of Cantaroy on craters that shows that this local population was deeply involved in this process of symbiosis with the Aegean area. This culture, during the second century AD, this tradition continued. We have crateroi also made locally, and dolia also locally made, continuing these traditions. What we have plenty attested for this time is the local wine production, which is suggested by the presence of two containers, a table amphora, you can see here. And these amphorae are present in all the Roman fortifications. And a second container, which is to have Greek roots, and is so-called, I'll call it table pitchers. We have a large variety of these pitchers. Interestingly, it was exported during the first, second century also in this area of Moldavia. Also, we have in this area of Moldavia local, continue to have a local table amphora made in the Greek traditions. We have a multitude of workshops for these table pitchers, you see from the fabric. Also, these table amphora and pitchers were common in the Chersonesos area, in the Crimea. But another container for wine, for table, it's cheap wine, for table wine, it's you can see it is represented by barrels carried by the Roman troops during the First and the Second Dacian War. And for sure, this was the most usually the most usual container for the table wine. We have also another, this bas-relief from Mercia Inferior that shows clearly the process of making wine and transport with in barrels and so on. In Crimea also, during the second and third, if in the first century you have table amphorae, during the second and third century you have a boom of the local wine production, as you can see in this graph, made at Bezimea, where I work on the pottery, a small hilltop fortification on the in the Chersonesos on Hora. We have quite a variety of local amphorae, and this is the Zeist 73, 73, 72, and some other local. This is also typical fabric for these Pontic productions. It's a pity we cannot turn off the lights. I don't know why. We have also a Crimean imitation of Heraclean and Sinopian amphorae, also in the local fabric. The Colchian area also developed its own amphora types. We can see this fabric is very full, very rich in mica, in pyroxene. And on many of them, we can see traces of blackish substance, maybe kind of tar from petroleum related, maybe. You can see how this black substance penetrated inside of the fabric. Also, during the late Roman time, we have Chersonesan production is a continuation of the Este 72 during the 4th century, and imitation of late Roman 1. We have also a South Pontic unidentified center, which is represented by this fabric. It's very rich in iron nuclei. This fabric, we have it in POMPEIOPOLIS. It's on the second place and has frequency. And the Eastern Crimea production, we have this amphorae. The Colchian production, wine production, continued during the late Roman time, and Sergei Vnukov distinguished South Colchian production distinguished from North Colchian productions. And it is also a time when this amphora have been quite exported. This amphora was found in a shipwreck between Cyprus and the Levant, and the Palestine. Okay, another Colchian amphorae. Sinope also continued his thriving wine production, was developing these carrot shapes, which evolves from the 4th to the 5th and the 6th centuries. And then also in the 6th century, we have another amphora shape made in a whitish clay. We know at least 4 shipwrecks of Sinope carrying this carrot amphorae. Heraclea also continued, but only Heraclea diminished massively the shape of the amphora, and it's only 2 or 3 liters capacity. And also in many of them we can find these traces of blackish substance. What is interesting is that this boom in wine, of the wine industry, reached also the province of Skythian, Dobruja today. We have workshops of this amphora for local table amphora, but also for the transport amphora, which is very interesting. And these amphora were imitated north of the Danube, east of the Carpathian Mountains. In the same area, north between the Carpathians and the Danube, we have a different story. We have to understand that, especially from the 3rd, 4th century, the connection of this area with the rest of the empire were very restricted and controlled. So this area, because didn't have access to those Aegean wine, developed its own production. And this is amphora of the 4th century that imitated this Heraclean amphora, shell of type F. Also, they imitated the bag-shaped amphorae, Aegean amphorae. And during the same later on period, we have this amphora type, Cosman of 14, 15, so on, that is very abundant in these provinces of the lower Danube. And it was already supposed that they have a West Pontic origin, but just before coming to this conference, I've been told that they discovered an amphora workshop of this type at Noviodunum on the Danube. should be more, or many other workshops, but for sure we have proved that it's indeed West Pontic. The capacity is diminished to the end of the 6th century, but it's important that we still have this kind of productions. Okay, another point which I wanted to make is that many specialists who works in the Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean do not know very well the Pontic amphora production. So this is an example from the Athenian Agora, context of the 4th century, where we have here some Pontic amphorae, which have been later published by me, but we have also in the Agora North Pontic imitation of Sinopian amphoras. This. We have also Heraclean amphora published by Robinson, and also this amphora is Crimean imitation of Heraclean amphora. We have Z72, 73 similis Heraclea. We have some amphora of Sinopian amphora of the 4th century and 5th century. Yes, also this is in the Athenian Agora, Heraclea. And this also amphora from Heraclean amphora from the Agora. And this shell of E type is also present in the Agora. And this South and North Pontic amphora also in the Agora. A few words about the Sinopian olive oil. For sure, this globular amphora with funnel-shaped mouth, was made in a Sinopian fabric, and we have similar necks at the workshop at Devergy. A complete amphora was published from Vibinacium. Oh, now let's talk about the fish productions. This North Pontic area has a long tradition in processing fish. We have here an example of interesting type of pitos, archaic pitos, that was used for processing fish. Also, during the Hellenistic time, we have many pithoi that were also used to process fish. And in the Roman time, we have vats at Tiritaki, at Myrmekion, and at Chersonesus, I know over 80 vats cut into the bedrock that is typical for Chersonesus, so it was easy to plaster that rock. And another, actually the only proof that this Pontic amphora, maybe this is West Pontic or North Pontic, it's hard to say. It's an amphora discovered west of Odessos, Varna today, by the Americans. Bob Ballard team. And it was full of fish bones cut. It's a large, I'm talking about a large fish, catfish, that were cut pieces 18 centimeters each, and were found in this amphora. Well, initially it was published as by, I don't know, their archaeologists as a Sinopian Hellenistic amphora, which is not the case. Okay, and some North Pontic fish amphora from Kerch, Bosporan production. Okay, you can see that sometimes this will imitate the Sinopian fish amphora. And this large amphorae, I'm quite sure that they were used for fish. Another method which is attested by literary testimony is that you can process fish inside of this large amphora, putting also layers of fish, salt, and herbs, vegetable that will probably after a few months, the process was finished and they could export it right away. Also have table fish. I call this table fish amphorae, are very small and made in typical fabric, local fabric. And also we have a sample for degustation, only 10 centimeters tall, and it was a common practice. I have also degustations, a small vessel for degustation in the shape of Dressel 711 found in Asia. So it was a common practice to have these small samples for degustation. Okay, we have another amphora types, local type, and I've been able to connect some of this amphorae to specific area, Balaclava area, which has a nice gulf, and I've seen the same fabric on a Balaclava pipe, and it was easier to make the connection. Actually, this is a typical fabric mostly for this Balaclava. Oh, okay. On the western shore, we have an interesting discovery. Actually, we have already information, epigraphic information dating from 100 AD that the Horace of Laberius Maximus was the governor of Mercia, and that said that the town is so great distance from the mouth of the river Danube, and that the only revenue of Istria was pickled fish. So it was, we can infer that the fish was processed 40 kilometers away from Istria, near the Danube, and after that it was transported. And this is another, it's an amphora, which seems to be very close to that found of Varna, that most likely had a fish content, salted fish. Those large amphora I consider as mostly for salted fish, not for liquamen or garum and so on, because of these huge capacities and the large neck and mouth. Another interesting discovery is an amphora workshop found north of the Danube on the river Prut. It's about 500 kilometers, 400 maybe from the Danube Delta, because the big fish used to go up on this river, on the Prut River, and to deposit its eggs, and they organized this workshop immediately on the spot to process this important product for them. I consider that this Sinopian amphora, by its design, it fits very well a fish product. It was exported. You can find it in Crete, for example, and then almost every military garrison on the border of the Danube. Okay, I chose this slide because I consider that we'll have a wrong impression about the Pontic exports, because as you have seen, or we don't know too much, or indeed was not the Pontic wine and salted fish was not so exported to the south, to the Aegean. But the real commercialized product was not the wine, but the grains. And we have some recent discoveries made in the Black Sea, and you know that because of the lack of oxygen under 100 meters, the wood is very well preserved. You can see how well preserved was this wood. But what is interesting is that in these shipwrecks, we have only 4 or 5 latrum and 1 amphorae, and which belongs to the crew member. Okay, either was wine, Cilician wine or not. And that this is can infer from this that this Cilician or Cypriot vessel traveled, maybe carrying Latrum 1 into the pond, into the Pontic area, and went back carrying grain. So because it's the shipwreck is empty, only this amphorae, and of course, if you don't have a ballast, you just cannot sail. So the content, most likely it was grain. There are also, will be published soon, there are some shipwrecks carrying timber. So grain and timber seems to be the mostly exported products from this area. And of course, if they had a chance, they took some wine amphorae or fish amphorae and so on. And just 2 graphs to show that in the rural territory, I made this calculation. I transformed yes, okay. So the most abundant, numerous product is the North Pontic wine. Okay. North Pontic wine. And after that comes the table amphora and pitchers. But when we talk about table amphora and the table pitcher, have to keep in mind that these vessels were reused many times here. Not just that was the specific of this table amphora. And of course, Dressel 24 for olive oil and Zeist 80 also dominate the graph. In the 4th, 5th century, we have only Synopian carrot, and the later one too for olive oil. In conclusion, after the mid-1st century, we witnessed a massive transplantation of Aegean vines that improved the local wine production. During the early and late Roman times, the local table wine industry was boosted by the presence of the military garrisons, while the southern and northern vintage wine was mostly involved in a regional trade. A modest olive oil production was documented in the Synopian area. A flourishing salt fish industry was developed mainly on the northern coast of the Black Sea. We have a frequent reuse of some Heraclean and Colchian amphorae for carrying tar, that pitchy, that blackish shining substance. The use of amphorae as proxy for wine, olive oil, and fish products must not be exaggerated. Many other products, such as grains and timber, do not leave any traces, but the deep water and underwater discovery, infer the frequent trade in these products. Countless Pontic amphora shells were not frequently identified by specialists in the Mediterranean excavations. And the lower Danube and Pontic areas were not a marginal zone to the Mediterranean. The Eastern Mediterranean, I would say, was more connected with the Pontic area than it was with the Western Mediterranean. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your explanation of the situation on the Black Sea. And Paul, if you can come and point out some discussion. And everybody is hungry, I'm afraid. So let's try to...
Can you just tell me again where you say you found the kiln sites of, oh God, what was it? Was it Noviodunum, did you say? But what really, of Opait, of Opait B amphory, that's very interesting because the fabric looks just like Crimean fabric. No, Crimean amphory.
Please, can you use...
What?
Yes,
Oh, okay. The fabric looks just like Crimean amphory.
yes. Initially,
It's rather worrying.
initially I thought the same, but
Right.
no, I'm mostly more on distributional grounds. This is the most frequently found amphora. We have very thick walls, and it's very frequently found in Scythia and Mercia Inferior.
But you said it's based on, I know they are, and also Capitaine IIs are. But what I was interested in is that you say it's from a kiln site production with this fabric.
I'm talking about the torpedo amphorae.
Opait B. Yes, the little ones.
Yeah, yes.
Are they made there?
Yes.
Well, they are. We now have a rather wide area where this type of fabric, which is similar also to Capitaine II, is being made, which is a surprise. I didn't expect to find it in the Danube area.
Yes, the Noviodunum area, it's very rich also in iron oxide.
Well, and don't you think it's then possible that Capitaine II is extremely common in the lower Danube, actually comes from there?
No, I don't think so, because it's common, but in what sense? We have one or two or three pieces in the whole settlements. It's not. It's abundantly found by dispersions, but not in quantities. You know
what about Novi? I thought it was very common at Novi. I was thinking of...
Novi, it's a military base, of course. It's a different story. Troismis also, Durostorum. Of course, you have to expect that in a legion garrison, have to expect expensive wines. No, it's...
Well, okay. The other thing, I was surprised that you said that these big Pontic amphorae, Zeiss 72.
Yes.
I always thought, and I've got lots of them in Beirut. You never mentioned Beirut. There's lots of Black Sea amphorae in Beirut.
I left it for you. You said that you present.
It's not that you haven't got a dot on your map, oh God, the Zeiss 72 was a wine amphora.
Yes.
Where do you get the evidence that these are wine amphorae?
Well, I have quite a lot of fragments of pitch inside, heavily pitched.
But it could be fish. I always thought they were fish amphorae. I always thought all these big amphorae were fish.
Well, in this case, why should you make such a narrow neck?
It's not that
when you
narrow.
have a neck,
They're quite big.
Well, no, it's like that. When you have amphoras necks like that.
Yes, that's true. Okay.
Because also we have huge trading platforms in Chersonesos. And we have tested and the wine production in the Chersonesos Hora territory.
In this period, in the second century?
Second, third century. We still have farms.
Good. No, I'm pleased to hear it. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
There's really nothing else I ought to say, really.
Okay.
But I would still like to discuss some things with you.
Okay.
Yes, Dario.
I have a question for Andrei.
Don't present your slides?
Oh,
Sure.
no, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
They're just examples of, which have all been published, so, of Sinope, and there's a great link between Beirut and Sinope in the mid-3rd century and onwards, not the 4th, but some of the reason for that, and the 5th century, and going on. So there's a great link between southern Crimea and then the Sinope in this period.
Yeah, but you're the only one who said this.
It's
No,
all
you don't have
quantified.
too many others publications. I published some fragments from Athens, but we expect more.
Andrei, one question for you
Yes.
concerning the fish amphora. You mentioned the Varna underwater complete amphora, and if I understood properly, you told that it had a fish chunks of around 20 centimeters. The size of the meat,
18.
80, and how have they determined the size?
They present. I've seen in Marseille Museum also similar cutting of their big fish, 3 or 4 meters could be sometimes catfish.
No, but I understood that this amphora was full of
Yes.
chunks,
Yes.
okay, cut
Yes.
pieces of meat.
Yes.
So, which is the size? You talk about the
This is-
size of this.
Darius, I'm telling you what they wrote, and they said that it was have preserved I don't know, vertebrae or I don't know 18 centimeters.
So are there actually fish
I've seen
remains?
Michel, maybe you can tell us about those fish bones in the Marseille Museum.
Miriam?
Wait, please, to the microphone.
Ce qu'on a à Marseille, in French, no, in English. What we have in Marseille, it's only the skeleton of tuna, and it's the tuna have been cut in the longer part, and the skeleton have been put in the harbor. So it's not the meal, ce sont les déchets qu'on a à Marseille. I don't know how they cut the meat of the tuna. So I don't have no idea of...
But in the Hellenistic period, they were famous for big chunks of, weren't they? And sturgeon and all sorts of things. I forgot to say...
We have large tributaries of the Black Sea, Danube, Dniester, Dnieper, which are the favorite place for migration of these huge fish.
Sorry, I forgot to say that Marshall is also analysing the contents of the Sinopean and the Crimean Black Sea 3rd century amphorae and the carrots of Sinope. So we should know what they contain shortly. From Beirut, this is. Question?
Concerning the ZIST 75, we found a cargo of ZIST 75 in the area of Furnos, Eastern Aegean, containing the type of small lobster I showed one day before. So, okay, it might be reused, but we have a whole cargo of it, and it's interesting also that the same cargo is accompanied also by Capitaine 2. from which we raised a sample. So it's interesting because we might have the middle link between the trade of, Black Sea and Beirut.
How many amphorae?
How many Kapitein or Zist?
Zeist and Kapitein.
Zist, the top layer contained at least 60 or 70 intact amphora, but the shipwreck is heavily shielded. It's in the mud. But
and how many Kapitein twos?
We saw in the top level just 2 of them, and we raised 1.
Oh dear. All right. Very interesting, though.
Yeah. Could belong to the crew. Yeah.
No more comments?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, that's it? Okay. So thank you very much to everybody. It was a huge and dense morning, and in which we went through the North African, the African situation of the Amphora, with trying to point out the situation with the problems that are still open, the ones that maybe have been started to be somehow a little bit solved, with the interesting point that oil is probably no more considered the only content of North African Amphora, and all the complexity of the eastern part of the Mediterranean. I think that maybe later we could go on reflecting on all the issues that have been coming out during the morning. And I would also like to point out the fact that we have, as we say, the first day to integrate with all kinds of archaeometry. Also in the African area, we have seen that although a lot of inorganic archaeometry has been carried out in the years, we still have problems of identification of provenance, and we should try to cross each time more the residues analysis and the content analysis in order to really have possibilities to understand which were the real content of the Amphora, and also focus on the different contents from the ones that we are usually used to consider, that mainly for the Eastern and Levant part have been pointed out. But we should also remember that not only, although they were the main contents, but not only oil, wine, and fish sources were contained, probably contained in Amphora, and also the possibilities that oils different from olive oil were traveling around. We have seen the moringa case the other day, and the castor oil, etc. So maybe in the afternoon we can go on discussing on all the problematics we didn't have time to discuss during this day and a half on the regional synthesis and on the integrating of all the different disciplines in order to get better, deeper analysis of the contents of the Amphora.